Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. Look, new rule from the VA could be splitting veterans and spouses, and this is a horrific situation here that we really need to dive in on. It's one of these kind of below the radar, not a lot of folks are aware of it, but I want to bring it to your attention so that way if you do have a concern, you can voice it to the appropriate body, whether it's your congressional member, your Senate member, or the VA directly. Remember that this is a VA rule, not a congressional law that they're doing. This is just a rule that the VA is deciding to try to implement, and it has some negative consequences, in my opinion, when it comes to your veteran and spouse combination. So let's jump into it. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. The two asks are really hit that thumbs up and let the video run. Those two things help the channel, and it helps to get the word out to the masses. Many hands make light work, right? So let's jump into it. The headline is New VA rule could prevent veterans from being buried with spouses. Look, life is a conveyor belt. We're all going to be there at one point. And it would be nice to have some clarity on our final resting place with our loved ones. So let's move on. A new Department of Veterans Affairs plan has sparked concerns that some veterans could be barred from being buried with their spouses. What kind of? That just doesn't even make sense to me. All right, so let's go on. The proposed rule change recently published by the VA would begin allowing family members of deceased veterans the option to receive a commemorative plaque and an urn in place of being interned at a national cemetery, according to a report from military.com. The plan, which would go into effect this year, 2024, is now open for public comment and has faced backlash from multiple groups who have voiced concerns that families offered the benefit could be caught off guard after accepting the urn or plaque, only to later find out that they will be unable to be buried together with their loved one, according to the report. Wow, horrific. Moving on, groups opposing the new rule include the National... Okay, look, sometimes it's important to understand who's supporting things because it really shines a light on if it's really a good thing or a bad thing. All right. Groups opposing the new rule include the National Funeral Directors Association and the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, so a state organization, the State Veterans Affairs, and the National Funeral Directors Association, who argued that the rule, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more that are also against it if those two entities are. It's just a matter of time before more jump on it. These two entities argued that the rule would present families with a false choice and force them to feel like they have to give up one benefit in favor of another. Instead, the National Funeral Directors Association suggested in its public comment that the VA open cemetery plots for cremated veterans regardless of whether their families choose to receive an urn or plaque, thus giving their spouses the option to be buried at a national cemetery along with the remains at a later date. And then there's a quotation, and this is where we kind of pick up a little bit of what's going on, the nuggets of the situation. So here is a quotation. We understand that double dipping benefits, receiving the urn benefit and then the burial plot benefit, is prohibited. Okay, because you're getting two things. If you get an urn, right, you can't get the burial plot. So let's read on here. The association said, according to the report, however, a veteran and his or her spouse are both entitled to distinct burial benefits. So while a veteran who receives an urn is no longer eligible for additional benefits like burial, the spouse still has several final disposition benefits to choose from, including ground burial. The group noted that the current language of the rule change would result in non-veteran spouses being buried in veteran cemeteries where their veteran spouse is not allowed after receiving the urn or plaque. Moves on here. The Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs said in its comment that a relatively low-cost item such as an urn should not lead to the denial of a significant burial benefit. I agree. The organization also expressed concerns that a state or tribe might inadvertently violate the terms of federal grant funding by burying veterans in a government cemetery whose family had already accepted the other benefit, resulting in cuts to vital grant funding. Okay, so for those that don't know, there are national cemeteries that are actually functioned by the VA. The VA is a three-headed monster. Okay, so you have the VBA, the Benefits Administration, the VHA, the Health Administration, and the National Cemetery Administration. Okay, so that's the VA side. Then, so you have those national cemeteries throughout the U.S. In addition, you also have, and I'm guessing, I don't know every single state, the majority or all states also have state veteran cemeteries. The state veteran cemeteries intern veterans and spouses, and then they submit paperwork to the federal government, VA, which then turn around and cut them a check. So they're kind of getting reimbursed some of the costs. They don't cover all their costs, but they do cover a substantial amount of the cost to function the cemetery by way of these different grants and so forth that comes through. And that's why these state cemeteries resemble the national cemeteries. Part of the deal is you must essentially, for lack of a shorter way of putting it, mirror the national cemetery model as far as the look, feel, vibe, how the stucco is on the columbarium or whatever, right? So all of that stuff has to be in line with the federal VA. So anyway, so what the state here is saying is we at the state level could screw up and then jeopardize our money from the federal government, and we don't want to do that either. So moving on through the article, meanwhile, the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs argued that denying internment of a veteran's remains based on the choice to receive the plaque or urn would be counter to the large purpose of honoring veterans, wherein internment is an eligibility and services are done with compassion. So let's move on through this and see what else we can find. Let's see. Moving on past a couple pictures here. Reached for comment by Fox News Digital, VA Press Secretary Terrence Hayes said that a 2020 law requires the agency to provide commemorative plaques and urns to families who do not wish to inter their loved ones. Under this law, veterans who receive a commemorative plaque or urn are prohibited from being interned in a VA national cemetery or provided a government headstone, marker, or medallion in any cemetery, Hayes continued. VA's proposed regulation is following the law as enacted. So, moving on here, before we move on, if you disagree with that, then we need to change the law. So I suggest reaching out to your congressional members and letting them know that because you got an urn, maybe the surviving spouse wants you in an urn for a little while, and then when they pass, they want the remainder of the family to then bury you two together, right? Maybe that's something that could be enacted. So let's move on. Hayes said the VA proposal for enacting the new rule was laid out in November, adding that the agency cannot comment on the rulemaking process. VA values the opinion and feedback we receive from our partners and always reviews and analyzes comments on proposed rules before publishing a final rule, Hayes said. As always, we will do everything in our power to make sure that veterans and their families have a clear and full understanding of their burial and memorial options at VA without confusion or surprises, so we can provide them with the honors that they deserve. And I'm thinking that concludes it now. So again, you see the dilemma, and I think that sometimes people just aren't going to be aware. You think to yourself, well, I think we should go with an urn for now, for all the right reasons, and then maybe later we'll just kind of do the combined burial, and then you're hit with with a surprise. So in any case, wanted to bring you up to speed with that. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.